In rural Nevada, a single mother fleeing abuse was about to discover her $8,000 motel purchase came with a deadly secret. What started as a desperate fresh start took a shocking turn when Lena Morales found room 13, a door that shouldn't exist, locked for 15 years. Lena wasn't your typical motel owner. For 6 years, she had survived domestic violence, known for her fierce protectiveness of 9-year-old daughter Sofia. When she breached the mysterious room, she had no idea she was uncovering a $298 million cartel operation that would force her to negotiate with criminals, corrupt law enforcement, and her violent past. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Honda Civic's engine coughed twice before dying completely in the gravel parking lot of the Starlight Motel. Lena Morales kept her hands on the steering wheel for a long moment, staring through the bug-splattered windshield at what she'd bought with her last $8,000 and 2 years of secret savings. The motel looked worse than the online photos. Much worse. The neon sign, Starlight Motel Vacancy, hung at an angle, its tubes cracked and dark. Paint peeled from the single-story structure in long, leprous strips, exposing sun-bleached wood beneath. Weeds pushed through cracks in the parking lot, reaching toward the 7-numbered doors that faced Highway 49. Behind them, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly, heat shimmering off distant mountains. "Is this it?" Sofia's voice was small from the back seat. Lena glanced in the rearview mirror. Her daughter's dark eyes were too knowing for 9 years old, taking in every detail with the careful assessment of someone who'd learned to read danger in her surroundings. Sofia's fingers worried the edge of her sketchbook, leaving small creases in the paper. "This is it, baby." Lena forced brightness into her voice. "Our fresh start." Sofia nodded slowly. Her forced smile didn't reach her eyes, but she held it there anyway. "It's like a castle," she said quietly. "A fixer-upper castle." The lie was so transparent that Lena's chest ached. Her daughter had learned too young how to pretend everything was fine, how to smooth over tension with manufactured optimism. 6 years of watching Marcus's moods, 6 years of reading which smiles were safe and which preceded violence, had taught Sofia to perform happiness like a survival skill. "Exactly," Lena said. She unbuckled her seatbelt with hands that wanted to shake. "Come on, let's explore our kingdom." The afternoon heat hit like a physical blow when she opened the car door. It was early September, but Nevada didn't acknowledge autumn the way California did. The air tasted of dust and distance, empty in a way that should have felt peaceful but instead amplified the sound of her own heartbeat. Their belongings fit into 4 garbage bags and 2 battered suitcases. Everything they owned in the world, packed in 20 minutes while Marcus was at work. Lena had thrown away more than she'd kept. Dishes, furniture, photographs, anything that might slow them down. The only thing Sofia had insisted on was her collection of sketchbooks, 3 years' worth of drawings documenting a childhood Lena wished she could erase and start over. The manager's office sat at the far left of the horseshoe-shaped building. The door stuck in its frame, swollen with years of weather, and Lena had to shoulder it open. Inside, decades of paperwork covered every surface: receipts, ledgers, guest registries with names from the 1990s. The air smelled of old paper and something else, something organic that made Lena think of abandonment. "Hello?" she called into the dim interior. Silence answered. According to the auction documents, the motel had been empty for 15 years. The previous owner, Victor Salazar, had disappeared, and the property had languished in probate until the county finally forced a sale. Lena had been the only bidder. She'd thought that was lucky. Standing here now, surrounded by the detritus of someone else's life, she wondered what she'd missed. Behind the office was their living quarters. A bedroom barely large enough for the double mattress on the floor, a bathroom with rust stains in the tub, and a kitchenette where the refrigerator hummed uncertainly. Someone had left a calendar on the wall from 2010, permanently frozen on March. "I call the bedroom," Sofia announced with false enthusiasm, already spreading her art supplies across the mattress. "We're sharing," Lena said gently. "For now." Sofia's relief was visible. She didn't want to sleep alone any more than Lena wanted her to. Some nights, Sofia still woke screaming from nightmares she couldn't or wouldn't explain. Those nights, Lena would hold her daughter and feel the weight of every mistake she'd made. Every month she'd stayed with Marcus. Every excuse she'd believed. The sound of an approaching vehicle made Lena freeze. Her body remembered before her mind caught up. The way Marcus's truck sounded pulling into the driveway. The particular note of its engine that meant she had seconds to assess his mood, to arrange her face, to prepare. But this wasn't Marcus's truck. Through the office window, Lena watched an ancient Ford pickup rattle into the parking lot. An elderly woman climbed out with surprising agility, carrying 2 covered casserole dishes. Lena's hand found the pepper spray in her pocket. She'd bought 3 canisters in Bakersfield, 1 for her purse, 1 for the car, 1 for her bedside. The weight of it steadied her breathing. The woman knocked, before pushing open the stuck door. She was in her 70s, rail-thin, with hair dyed an aggressive shade of auburn and shrewd eyes that cataloged everything in 3 seconds. "You must be the new owner," she announced. "I'm Dolores Webb. Everyone calls me Dolly. Brought you dinner. Figured you'd be too tired to cook after the drive." "That's very kind." Lena stayed near the desk, maintaining distance. "I'm Lena. That's my daughter Sofia." Dolly's gaze flickered toward the bedroom, then back to Lena. Her expression shifted, understanding something Lena hadn't said. Running from something or toward something? The directness of it struck Lena silent for a moment. "Toward," she finally said. "Definitely toward." "Good." Dolly set the casseroles on the least cluttered section of counter. "The other way never works. Trust me, I've seen it tried." There was weight in those words, layers of meaning Lena couldn't decode. She studied the older woman, trying to determine if this was friendliness or reconnaissance. In her experience, people who showed up uninvited usually wanted something. "I worked here for 30 years, Dolly continued, answering the question Lena hadn't asked. "Housekeeper. Knew Victor Salazar, the previous owner, from when he was in diapers. His parents ran this place before him." She paused, her expression darkening slightly. "Victor made some bad decisions. Real bad ones. Got himself into trouble he couldn't get out of." "What kind of trouble?" "The permanent kind." Dolly moved toward the window, looking out at the motel's horseshoe layout. "Place has been empty since he disappeared. March 2010. They never found him. Never found a lot of things." The way she said it made Lena's skin prickle. "Like what?" "Like answers." Dolly turned back, her eyes sharp. "You seem like a smart woman, Lena. So I'll give you one piece of advice. Don't go poking into things you don't understand. Some doors are locked for good reasons." Before Lena could respond, Sofia appeared in the doorway, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. She'd heard the warning. Lena could tell from the way her daughter's shoulders had gone rigid. Dolly's expression softened immediately. "Well, aren't you a pretty thing? You like to draw?" Sofia nodded cautiously. "My grandson's about your age. Lives in Reno with my daughter, but he visits sometimes. Maybe you two can meet." Dolly smiled, but her eyes held sadness. This place could use some young energy again. Been too quiet for too long. After Dolly left, with promises to return tomorrow with cleaning supplies, Lena stood in the parking lot, taking inventory of her new property. 7 rooms, numbered 1 through 7, arranged in a horseshoe around the parking lot. The office and their quarters on the left end. Each room would need cleaning, new linens, probably new mattresses. She mentally calculated costs against the $1,200 remaining in her bank account and felt panic flutter in her chest. She couldn't fail at this. There was nowhere left to run. Sofia appeared at her elbow, silent as always. "Mama? Yeah, baby? Why did that lady say some doors are locked for good reasons?" Lena pulled her daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I don't know, but we're not going to worry about it. We're going to fix this place up, make it beautiful, and build ourselves a good life." Okay, Sofia whispered, but she didn't sound convinced. That night, after a dinner of Dolly's surprisingly excellent casserole, Lena tucked Sofia into bed and then did what she'd been doing for 2 years. She checked the locks. Office door, bedroom door, windows. She wedged a chair under the office doorknob and placed empty bottles against the door. An early warning system in case someone tried to enter while they slept. Marcus didn't know where they were. She'd been careful. No social media, no phone calls to old friends, no credit card trail. Cash only. A new phone. A property purchased through an online auction from a county across state lines. They were safe. They had to be safe. But at 2 a.m., unable to sleep despite her exhaustion, Lena found herself exploring the property with a flashlight. The Nevada night was surprisingly cold. Stars scattered across the sky in unfamiliar patterns. She walked the horseshoe, checking each numbered door. Rooms 1 through 7, all identical, all equally dilapidated. Then she noticed it. At the far end of the property, past room 7, there was another door. It sat at an odd angle, almost hidden in shadow, and the number painted on it had faded to a barely visible 13. Lena's skin prickled. She walked closer, her flashlight beam catching on a lock that looked newer than the others. Reinforced. She tried her master keys one after another, cycling through the entire ring. None of them fit. According to the property map, there should only be 7 rooms. She'd studied that map obsessively before bidding, calculating occupancy rates and revenue potential. There had been no mention of a room 13. She tried the door handle anyway. Locked solid. The door itself felt heavier than the others, reinforced with metal beneath the wood veneer. Some doors are locked for good reasons. Dolly's words echoed in her mind. Lena stood there for a long moment, her hand on the unknown door, feeling the weight of all her choices converging on this point. She'd bought a property sight unseen, fled across state lines with her daughter, invested every penny they had in a decrepit motel in the middle of nowhere. And now there was a locked room that shouldn't exist. She should walk away, go to bed, forget she'd seen it. But Lena had spent 6 years learning to read danger, to sense when something was wrong, to trust her instincts even when logic argued otherwise. And every instinct she had was screaming that room 13 mattered. The question was whether it mattered enough to risk whatever fragile safety they'd found here. In the bedroom, Sofia slept restlessly, her drawings scattered across the mattress. Lena picked one up, a castle with high walls and a single locked door. Her daughter had drawn it earlier, calling it their fixer-upper castle. But in the drawing, something watched from the windows. Something with empty eyes. Lena put the drawing down carefully and climbed into bed beside her daughter. She tried to tell herself that tomorrow she'd call a locksmith, that there was probably a reasonable explanation for room 13's existence. An storage area, an electrical closet, something mundane. But as she lay in the darkness, listening to Sofia's breathing and the distant sound of trucks on Highway 49, Lena knew she was lying to herself. She'd gotten good at that over the years, manufacturing hope in desperate situations, pretending everything would be fine when nothing was fine at all. The Starlight Motel held secrets. Victor Salazar had made bad decisions and disappeared. And Lena had just spent her last dollar buying into whatever darkness he'd left behind. Outside, the desert wind picked up, rattling the windows and carrying the smell of dust and distance. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably looking for them. And here, in this forgotten place along Highway 49, mysteries waited behind locked doors. Lena closed her eyes and tried to sleep. But in her mind, she kept seeing that door marked 13. Kept feeling the weight of that reinforced lock, kept hearing Dolly's warning. Some doors are locked for good reasons. Tomorrow she'd start renovating. Tomorrow she'd focus on survival. Tomorrow she'd be practical and smart and careful. Tonight, she'd lie awake wondering what she'd really bought, and whether her desperate bid for freedom had just traded one trap for another. Lena's hands were raw by the 3rd day, blisters forming across her palms despite the cheap work gloves she'd bought at the hardware store in town. She stood in room 3, surveying her progress with a critical eye. The walls were halfway painted, a neutral beige that covered decades of water stains and cigarette smoke residue. The carpet was beyond saving, but she'd managed to scrub it clean enough that guests wouldn't immediately flee. Progress. Slow, painful progress. Outside, Sofia sat cross-legged on the motel's cracked concrete walkway, her sketchbook open on her lap. Dolly had arrived an hour ago with sandwiches and stories, settling into a plastic chair beside the girl like a grandmother claiming her rightful place. Their laughter drifted through the open door, and Lena felt something in her chest loosen slightly. Maybe this could work. Maybe they could build something here. The sound of tires on gravel made her freeze mid-brushstroke. Her body remembered before her mind caught up, the sharp spike of adrenaline, the instinct to assess escape routes, the automatic calculation of how much time she had to prepare. 6 years of domestic abuse had wired her nervous system for constant vigilance. But it wasn't Marcus's truck. A patrol car rolled into the parking lot, moving slowly, deliberately. The driver's door opened, and a man in his early 40s stepped out. Asian features, trim build, the kind of confident posture that came from wearing a badge. His uniform was crisp despite the heat, and his eyes swept the property with professional thoroughness before landing on Lena. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Afternoon," he called out, approaching with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Deputy Marcus Chun. Heard we had a new business owner in the area." Lena set down her paintbrush and wiped her hands on her jeans. "Lena Morales. Just getting the place ready to open." "Good to meet you." Chen's gaze traveled across the motel's facade, lingering on certain details. The office door, the numbered rooms, the far end where room 13 sat hidden in shadow. "Been empty a long time. 15 years is a lot of neglect to overcome." "I'm managing." "I'm sure you are." He pulled out a small notepad, the gesture casual but pointed. "Just need to get some basic information. Standard procedure for new businesses. How long you planning to stay?" "Permanently." Lena kept her voice steady. "This is home now. And it's just you and your daughter?" The question felt invasive, but Lena forced herself to answer calmly. "Yes, just us." Chun made a note, his pen moving slowly across the paper. "You planning to renovate the entire property? All the rooms?" "That's the idea, as budget allows." "Including the storage areas? Might be some old equipment back there worth salvaging." Lena's pulse quickened. Was he fishing for something specific? "I'll evaluate everything as I go. Right now, I'm focused on getting the main rooms operational." "Smart approach." Chun looked up from his notepad, and his smile shifted slightly. Something harder moved behind his eyes. "Word of advice. Don't mess with anything you don't understand. Old properties like this, sometimes things are left certain ways for good reasons." It was almost exactly what Dolly had said. The repetition felt intentional, like a warning being delivered from multiple angles. "I'll keep that in mind," Lena said carefully. After Chun left, with promises to check in regularly, that sounded more like surveillance than neighborliness. Dolly appeared at Lena's elbow. Her expression was grave. "That man's been nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs for 15 years, Dolly murmured. "You be careful around him." Before Lena could ask what she meant, another vehicle pulled into the lot. A modest sedan, rental plates. The driver who emerged was in his late 40s, Hispanic, with the kind of quiet presence that made him seem simultaneously forgettable and intensely observant. He wore business casual clothing and carried a single leather briefcase. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice soft and polite. "I'm hoping you might have a room available. I'm in the area on business for the next month." Lena's heart leaped. A month-long rental would be a financial lifeline. "Absolutely. I'm still getting everything ready, but room 4 is clean and functional. The rate would be, whatever your standard monthly rate is, I'll pay 50% above it for the convenience of a long-term stay." He extended his hand. "Raymond Castellanos. Most people call me Ray." His handshake was firm but not aggressive. His eyes met hers with the kind of directness that suggested honesty. But Lena had learned the hard way that honest eyes meant nothing. Marcus's eyes had seemed honest once. "That's very generous," she managed. "What kind of business are you in?" "Sales. Medical equipment." Lots of rural hospitals and clinics in Nevada need servicing. Ray smiled, and it looked genuine. I appreciate quiet places. This seems perfect. Every instinct Lena had screamed that something was off about this man. He was too polite, too accommodating, too interested in staying at a half-renovated motel in the middle of nowhere. But she needed his money desperately. Her savings were down to $800, and she hadn't even begun addressing the plumbing issues or electrical problems. "Room for it is," she said, manufacturing a smile. "Let me get you the key." That evening, after Ray had settled into his room with barely any luggage, Sofia made her discovery. She'd been exploring the storage closet behind the office. Something Lena had forbidden, but Sofia had done anyway with the stubborn curiosity of a 9-year-old. "Mama, look what I found." Sofia emerged holding a transistor radio, vintage and covered in dust. She'd already turned it on, and static hissed from its speaker. "Honey, that's probably broken." But then the static shifted. For just a moment, a voice emerged, clipped, speaking numbers in rapid sequence. 7, 3, 9, 2, 1, 4. Then back to static. Lena took the radio from Sofia's hands, her skin prickling. She turned the dial, searching for stations, but found only static interrupted by those brief, cryptic transmissions. Numbers. Always numbers. "It's like a secret code," Sofia said, her eyes bright with imagination rather than fear. "Like spies use." "It's probably just interference from old equipment," Lena said, but she didn't believe it. That night, after Sofia fell asleep, Lena stood in the office staring at room 13's door. She tried again to open it that afternoon, this time with bolt cutters borrowed from Dolly. The lock had defeated the tool completely, barely showing a scratch. What was behind that door? And why did both Dolly and Deputy Chun seem so invested in her not finding out? Through the window of room 4, she could see Ray's silhouette. He was sitting perfectly still, watching the parking lot, watching her property, watching room 13. Lena's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Her blood went cold, thinking of Marcus, but the message was from Dolly. "Found some old property records. Victor kept detailed journals. You should see them. Come by tomorrow." Lena looked at her sleeping daughter, at the radio still hissing its mysterious transmissions, at the locked door that shouldn't exist. She'd come here for safety, for a fresh start, for escape from violence. Instead, she'd found something else entirely. And walking away was no longer an option, not with $800 to her name and nowhere left to run. The journal was wedged behind a false drawer bottom in Victor Salazar's desk, and Lena found it purely by accident. She'd been searching for plumbing diagrams at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep, when the drawer stuck. Frustrated, she'd yanked too hard, and the entire bottom panel came loose in her hands. The leather-bound book fell onto the floor with a sound that seemed too loud in the silent office. Lena picked it up with trembling fingers. The first entry was dated January 1998, written in careful handwriting that spoke of optimism and plans for the motel's future. Victor had inherited the property from his parents, full of dreams about modernization and increased business. But as she flipped forward, the entries changed. The handwriting grew shakier, the tone darker. March 2007. They came today. Said they had a proposition. I should have said no. God help me, I should have said no. June 2007. The arrangement is working. More money than I ever imagined. But the cost. He needs the treatment. That's all that matters. He needs to live. December 2009. I tried to stop it. Told them I wanted out. They laughed. Said people don't leave arrangements like this. Said he would pay if I didn't cooperate. March 2010. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. Protect what matters. The money isn't worth your soul. The final entry ended abruptly, ink smeared as if Victor had been interrupted mid-sentence. Lena's hands shook as she turned to the back pages. There, sketched in frantic detail, was a diagram of room 13. Not just the exterior door, but the interior layout, showing a false wall, a hidden chamber, and notations about processing and transfers. Her breath came short and fast. This wasn't just an abandoned motel. This was a crime scene. She should call the police. That was the rational choice, the legal choice, the safe choice. But Deputy Chen's face flashed in her mind. His nervous energy, his pointed questions, his warning not to mess with anything. And she thought of her $800 in savings, of Sofia sleeping in the next room, of having nowhere else to go. Lena made a decision that would change everything. She gathered her tools, crowbar, flashlight, Victor's diagram, and walked across the parking lot to room 13. The Nevada night was cold and silent except for the distant sound of trucks on Highway 49. In room 4, Ray's light was off, but Lena had the unsettling feeling he was awake, listening. The crowbar bit into the doorframe with a crack that echoed off the mountains. Lena worked methodically, leveraging her weight against the tool. Feeling would splinter and metal groan. Sweat ran down her back despite the cold. Her hands, already raw from renovation work, began to bleed. The lock finally gave way with a sound like a gunshot. Lena pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was preserved like a museum exhibit from 2010. Filing cabinets lined one wall, their drawers slightly open as if someone had left in a hurry. A desk held computer equipment, outdated but still ominously present. Photographs were pinned to a corkboard, showing men in expensive suits carrying briefcases, cars with covered license plates, packages wrapped in plastic. But it was the wall safes that made her stomach drop. 3 of them built into the far wall. One hung open and empty. The other 2 remained locked, their combination dials waiting. Scratched into the surface of the middle safe, almost invisible unless you knew to look, was a single word: EVA. Lena pulled out her phone and began photographing everything. Her journalistic instinct, honed from years of reading true crime books and watching documentaries, overrode her shock. Document first, process later. She found ledgers filled with numbers that made no sense to her but clearly represented massive amounts of money. She found maps with routes marked across the Southwest. She found a USB drive taped under the desk drawer. And then she found the cameras. Tiny, sophisticated, still blinking with active power. Hidden in corners, disguised as electrical outlets, positioned to capture every angle of the room. Someone was watching. Someone had been watching for 15 years. Someone had just watched her break in. Lena's blood turned to ice. She carefully returned everything to its exact position, her mind racing through implications. She backed out of the room, pulled the door closed as best she could, and walked calmly back to the office. Only when she was inside, door locked, did she allow herself to shake. Ray's light in room 4 clicked on. Lena didn't sleep. She sat at the ancient desktop computer in the office, the screen's blue glow illuminating her face as she searched for answers. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she kept drinking it anyway, needing the bitter taste to ground her in reality. The search results painted a picture she wished she could unsee. FBI raid on rural Nevada motel yields empty rooms. March 2010 missing motel owner linked to cartel investigation. April 2010 $298 million in cartel funds remain unrecovered. June 2010 she clicked through article after article, watching Victor Salazar's face appear in grainy photographs. He looked ordinary, a tired man in his 40s with worry lines around his eyes, the kind of man who'd made desperate choices for someone he loved. The articles mentioned his teenage son, medical treatments, financial desperation, a devil's bargain with the Sinaloa cartel. And then Victor had disappeared and so had $298 million. A soft knock on the office door made Lena jump, her hand instinctively reaching for the pepper spray in her pocket. Ms. Morales? Ray's voice carried through the door, polite as always. Sorry to bother you so late. I couldn't sleep and noticed your light on. Thought you might want some coffee. I brought my French press. Lena's mind calculated rapidly. Refuse and seem suspicious, or accept and maintain her facade of normalcy. She unlocked the door but kept the chain engaged, opening it only a crack. Ray stood in the yellow parking lot light, holding 2 steaming mugs. His expression was pleasant, concerned even. But his eyes were far too alert for 3 in the morning. "That's thoughtful," Lena managed. "But I'm fine. Just catching up on paperwork." "The motel business keeping you up?" Ray's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in his tone. "Or something else?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. "Just business," Lena said carefully. "Of course." Ray nodded slowly. "You know, I've stayed in a lot of motels over the years. This one has interesting architecture. That far room, the one past number 7, is that storage?" Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. "Just a utility closet." Ray tilted his head slightly, studying her face. "Funny thing about utility closets, they don't usually need reinforced doors and commercial-grade locks." The pretense dropped like a mask falling away. Lena met his gaze directly, recognizing the moment for what it was. He knew. He'd always known. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "The same thing you want, Ms. Morales. To understand what's really behind that door." Ray's voice dropped lower. "The difference is I already know. The question is what you're planning to do with what you found." Before Lena could respond, headlights swept across the parking lot. Deputy Chen's patrol car rolled in slowly, deliberately, at 3:30 in the morning. Ray's expression hardened. "Careful who you trust," he murmured, then retreated to room 4 with his coffee mugs. Chen's door opened. He stepped out, his hand resting casually on his weapon. "Everything all right here, Ms. Morales?" His eyes moved between her and Ray's retreating figure. "Saw your lights on. Wanted to make sure there wasn't any trouble." Lena stood in her doorway, trapped between a cartel operative and a corrupt deputy, with $298 million in missing money somewhere in her property and her daughter sleeping 30 feet away. "No trouble," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "No trouble at all." Chun didn't leave. He leaned against his patrol car, arms crossed, watching the office with an intensity that made Lena's skin crawl. She closed the door and moved away from the window, her mind racing through scenarios, each one worse than the last. The cameras in room 13. They'd recorded her break-in, which meant someone, somewhere, had watched her discover the operation's remnants. The question was, who was on the other end of that feed? She forced herself back to the computer, searching with more specific terms now. Starlight Motel cartel operation. Victor Salazar money laundering. Sinaloa cartel, Nevada. The details emerged like pieces of a nightmare puzzle. The Starlight hadn't been a major hub, it was too remote for that. But it had served as a critical waypoint, a place where bulk cash could be processed, counted, and prepared for legitimate banking channels. Room 13 had been custom-built for the operation, invisible on official floor plans, equipped with money counters and packaging equipment. When the FBI closed in, the operation had collapsed. Victor disappeared. The money vanished. And for 15 years, Room 13 had sat waiting, its cameras still active, its secrets preserved like evidence in amber. Lena clicked on another link, this one leading to a missing persons database. Victor's son was listed Eduardo Salazar, age 16 at the time of his father's disappearance. Last known to be seeking gender-affirming medical care. He needs the treatment. That's all that matters. Victor's journal entries suddenly made terrible sense. He'd compromised everything for his child's medical needs. And then he'd tried to stop and they'd killed him for it. A soft sound from the bedroom made Lena's head snap up. Sofia stood in the doorway, her face pale in the computer's glow, clutching her sketchbook. "Mama, I had a bad dream. About the man in room 4. He was watching our door." Lena's blood went cold. "Baby, it was just a dream." "No." Sofia's voice was certain in the way only a child who'd learned to read danger could be. "I saw him. From my window. He stands outside his room sometimes and just watches. Like he's waiting for something." Lena pulled her daughter close, feeling the familiar weight of protective fury settle over her. She'd brought Sofia here to escape one predator. And instead they'd landed in the middle of something far more dangerous. A notification chimed on the computer. An email from an address she didn't recognize, sent to the motel's public contact form. Subject: Victor Salazar. Information request. Lena's hand hovered over the mouse, knowing she shouldn't open it but unable to resist. My name is Eva Salazar. I'm a private investigator researching my father's disappearance. I believe you may have information about the Starlight Motel's history. I'd like to arrange a meeting. This is not a threat. I'm simply searching for truth about what happened to my father. Please respond if you're willing to talk. The email included a phone number and a link to a professional website showing a woman in her early 30s with Victor's eyes and a determined expression. Eduardo had become Eva, and she was still searching for answers after 15 years. Lena looked at Sofia, then at the email, then through the window where both Chen's patrol car and Ray's room light remained ominously present. She thought about running again, loading their few possessions into the Honda and disappearing before dawn. But she had less than $800, a daughter who desperately needed stability, and nowhere left to go. Marcus was still out there, still searching. Running would only delay the inevitable. Instead, Lena opened a reply window and began typing. Eva, I'm the new owner. I found things you need to see. But we need to be careful. People are watching. Can you come in 2 days? Noon? She hit send before she could second-guess the decision. Outside, Dolly's trailer light clicked on. The old woman appeared in her doorway, looking toward the motel with an expression Lena couldn't read from this distance. Then Dolly raised one hand, not a wave but a gesture. A warning. Sofia pressed closer to her mother. Mama, I'm scared. I know, baby. Lena held her daughter tight, feeling the weight of every choice collapsing around them. I know. The morning sun hit the parking lot like an accusation, revealing everything in harsh detail. Lena watched from the office window as Deputy Chen finally drove away, his patrol car disappearing down Highway 49 with deliberate slowness. Ray emerged from room 4 moments later, stretching casually, but his eyes tracked Chen's vehicle until it vanished from sight. They were circling each other, waiting, and Lena was caught in the middle. Sofia, honey, I need you to spend the day at the library, Lena said, keeping her voice light. Dolly's going to take you. They have a whole section of art books you'll love. Sofia looked up from her cereal, her dark eyes too knowing. You're going to do something dangerous. I'm going to have an adult conversation. Lena crouched beside her daughter's chair. And I need to know you're safe while I do it. Because of the man in room 4? Because of a lot of things. Sofia nodded slowly, accepting this the way she'd learned to accept everything, with a resignation that broke Lena's heart. Okay, Mama. After Dolly collected Sofia, the old woman's shrewd eyes communicating volumes without words, Lena sat at the motel office desk and waited. She texted Dolly last night. Need to talk. About Victor. About everything. The response had been immediate. Come for lunch. Noon. We'll talk. But at 11:30, Dolly appeared at the office door instead, carrying a covered dish and wearing an expression of grim determination. Sofia's settled with books for hours, Dolly announced, locking the door behind her. Now, you found room 13. It wasn't a question. How did you know? Because I've been waiting 15 years for someone to find it. Dolly set down the casserole with more force than necessary. And because Deputy Chun showed up at 3 a.m. looking like he'd seen a ghost, and Ray Castellanos has been watching this place like a hawk watches a rabbit hole. Lena studied the older woman, recalculating everything. You knew what Victor was involved in. I knew he was desperate. Dolly sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 70-plus years. His kid, Eduardo, who's even now, needed medical treatment. Hormone therapy, surgeries, counseling. Insurance wouldn't cover it. Victor was drowning in debt, and then they came offering money. The cartel. The money men. That's what Victor called them. Dolly's voice grew quiet. At first, it seemed simple. Let them use one room for a few hours each week. Don't ask questions. Get paid enough to save his child's life. What father wouldn't make that choice? But it wasn't simple. It never is. Dolly's hands twisted in her lap. The operation grew. More money, more frequency, more people involved. Victor tried to stop it in 2010. Told them he wanted out. 2 weeks later, he disappeared. They found his truck in the desert, 50 miles from here, empty. No body, no evidence, just gone. Lena felt the familiar weight of understanding settling over her, the recognition of someone else who'd been trapped by circumstances, who'd made impossible choices for love. And Deputy Chun was a rookie deputy who suddenly had money for his daughter's cancer treatment right after the operation started. Dolly's expression hardened. He looked away, got paid to look away, and when the FBI came, evidence disappeared. Files went missing. The case fell apart. The money was never recovered. $298 million. Dolly met Lena's eyes directly. Victor moved it before they killed him. Left clues for Eva. But she's been searching for 15 years and hasn't found it. Why are you telling me this? Because Ray Castellanos was one of the money men. I remember his face from back then, even if he thinks I don't. He's here because he believes the money's still in the motel somewhere. And Chen's terrified that if it's found, his corruption gets exposed. Dolly leaned forward. You need allies, Lena, because those men aren't going to leave until they get what they want. A knock on the door made them both jump. Through the window, Lena saw a woman in her early 30s. Professional attire, determined expression, Victor's eyes. Eva Salazar had arrived a day early. Lena unlocked the door, and the woman who'd lost her father to this place stepped inside. Her gaze swept the office, landing on the desk where Victor had written his final journal entries. You're Lena Morales. Eva's voice was steady, but emotion flickered beneath it. You found something. That's why you contacted me. I found room 13. Eva's composure cracked slightly. You got inside? 2 nights ago. And the cameras? They're still active? Lena nodded slowly, understanding dawning. You've been watching the feed. All these years. Not me. A hacker I hired. He monitors the server. Alerts me to any activity. Eva's hands clenched at her sides. When you broke in, I was on a plane within 2 hours. I need to know. Did you find anything else? Any clues about where he moved the money? Before Lena could answer, footsteps approached outside. Ray Castellanos appeared in the doorway, his pleasant facade completely gone. His eyes locked on Eva with recognition and something else, respect, maybe, or calculation. Eva Salazar, he said quietly. I wondered when you'd show up. Eva's response was equally measured. Ray, still working for people who kill fathers? Still searching for money your father stole? The tension in the room crackled like electricity. Dolly stood slowly, positioning herself between the younger women and Ray. Now wait just a minute. Everyone needs to calm down, Lena interjected, her voice carrying the authority she'd learned from years of de-escalating Marcus's violence. Because we're all looking for answers, and we're not going to find them by threatening each other. Ray's eyebrow lifted slightly. You're proposing cooperation? I'm proposing we stop pretending we don't all want the same thing, to understand what really happened here. Lena looked at each of them in turn. Victor left clues. Eva's been searching. Ray needs to recover the money, and I just want my daughter safe. Maybe we can help each other. Or maybe... A voice called from outside. You can all help me. Deputy Chun stood in the parking lot, his hand resting on his weapon, his face pale with desperation. Because if that money surfaces, he continued, we all go down, every single one of us. The office felt too small for the weight of accumulated secrets. Eva stood rigid near the desk, her father's ghost practically visible in the space between them. Ray leaned against the wall with deceptive casualness, but his eyes never stopped moving, calculating exits and angles. Dolly had positioned herself protectively near Lena, one weathered hand gripping the back of a chair. And through the open door, Deputy Chen's presence poisoned the air like a gas leak waiting for a spark. Close the door, Marcus, Lena said quietly. Or leave, but stop lurking like a threat. Chen's jaw tightened, but he stepped inside, pulling the door shut behind him. His uniform looked less crisp today, his face showing evidence of sleepless nights. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it. Eva's voice cut through the tension. Explain how my father died while you looked the other way. I didn't know they'd kill him, but you knew what he was involved in. You took their money. You made it possible. Eva moved forward, and for a moment, Lena saw the private investigator beneath the grieving daughter. Someone who'd spent 15 years learning to be dangerous in her own way. You buried evidence. The FBI couldn't make charges stick because you made sure they couldn't. Chen's hand drifted toward his weapon, then stopped. His eyes darted to Ray. You tell them what happens to people who talk. I'm not here for violence, Ray said, his tone measured. I'm here for resolution. There's a difference. Is there? Lena asked. Because from where I'm standing, you worked for people who murdered Victor Salazar. Ray met her gaze directly. I managed financial operations. I didn't order executions. But yes, I worked for people capable of murder. Past tense. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite regret, but acknowledgement. I spent 3 years in prison for an unrelated charge. When I got out, the organization had moved on. My only way back to any kind of standing is to recover what was lost here. The $298 million. Eva's voice was bitter. Money laundered through my father's motel? Blood money from drug operations? And you think recovering it earns you redemption? I think it keeps me alive. Ray's honesty was almost refreshing in its bleakness. The cartel doesn't forget debts. I owe them for the operation's collapse. Finding the money is my only currency. The money isn't here, Eva said flatly. My father moved it before he died. Room 13 was theater, a decoy to keep people looking in the wrong place while the real assets disappeared. The revelation landed like a bomb. Chen's face went white. Ray's expression flickered with something between admiration and frustration. Dolly nodded slowly, as if this confirmed suspicions she'd held for years. You're certain? Ray asked. I've spent 15 years tracking my father's movements in his final weeks. He liquidated the cash through a series of transactions, converted it to bearer bonds, and hid them somewhere on this property. Eva pulled out her phone, showing a photograph of Victor's journal, a different page than the one Lena had found. His final entries reference the foundation, the bones of the place, what holds everything up. He encoded the location in the motel's structure itself. Lena's mind raced. The motel's original construction dated to the 1960s. Hollow walls, vintage materials, spaces that could hide small packages. He put the bonds inside the building. Exactly, but it requires accessing specific rooms in sequence, following clues he left. I've been trying to decode them for years, but I needed to be physically present. I needed access to the entire property. Eva looked at Lena directly, which is why I need your cooperation. And if I refuse, then we all lose. The bonds stay hidden. Ray's cartel comes looking for answers. Chen's corruption eventually surfaces, and you're left running a motel built on buried crimes with a target on your back. Eva's voice softened slightly. Where we work together. Find the bonds. Use them as leverage to protect ourselves and disappear. Leverage how? Chun demanded, desperation making his voice sharp. By making everyone need us more than they need revenge. Ray answered. He'd clearly been thinking along the same lines. The cartel wants their money. The FBI wants convictions. Chun wants his past buried. Eva wants truth about her father. Lena wants safety for her daughter. He looked at each of them in turn. We find the bonds, we control the narrative. A sound from outside made them all freeze. Through the window, Lena saw a vehicle pulling into the parking lot. Not a patrol car this time. A dark sedan with government plates. A man in his early 60s emerged. His gray suit rumpled from travel. His face carrying the weight of old failures. He looked at the motel with an expression that mixed nostalgia and bitterness. Then his gaze found the office window. Found them all standing there together. That's James Worthy, Eva breathed. FBI. He led the original investigation. Ray swore quietly. Chun looked like he might vomit, and Lena watched as 15 years of buried secrets began to surface all at once, with her daughter somewhere in town and no way to run. Worthy approached the office door with the inevitability of justice deferred but not denied. When he knocked, it sounded like fate arriving. "Ms. Morales?" His voice carried through the door, weathered but determined. "I'm Agent Worthy, FBI. I need to speak with you about your recent purchase, and I believe you have several people in there who've been waiting a very long time to talk to me." In the tense silence that followed, Sofia's radio, still sitting on the desk, crackled to life. Static resolved into a voice, clear for the first time. 739-214. The numbers Victor had been transmitting for 15 years, waiting for someone to listen. Ray's eyes widened with recognition. Those aren't random. Those are coordinates. Room numbers and measurements. Eva grabbed the radio, her hands shaking. He's been broadcasting the location all along. And outside, Agent Worthy waited for someone to open the door and let the past finally come flooding in. The knock came again, more insistent. Lena's hand hovered over the doorknob while her mind calculated impossible mathematics. 5 people with conflicting agendas, 1 FBI agent, and somewhere in town, Sofia reading art books with no idea her mother was standing at the center of a 15-year-old conspiracy. "Don't open it," Chin hissed, his face slick with sweat. "Once he's involved, there's no controlling the situation. It's already uncontrolled," Eva said quietly, still clutching the radio. "My father's been broadcasting coordinates for 15 years. If we figured it out, Worthy might have too." Ray moved to the window, his body language shifting into something more alert, more dangerous. "There's another vehicle coming. Fast." Lena's blood turned to ice even before she saw it. The pickup truck was sun-faded red, moving too quickly down Highway 49, kicking up dust as it turned into the motel parking lot with reckless speed. She knew that truck, would know it in her nightmares forever. Marcus Hayes emerged from the driver's side, and 6 years of survival instincts screamed through Lena's nervous system. He looked thinner than she remembered, wilder. His jaw shadowed with uneven stubble and his eyes carrying the manic energy of obsession. "Lena!" His voice cracked across the parking lot like a whip. "I know you're in there. You think you can just take my daughter and disappear? We're a family." Sofia. Every thought collapsed to that single point. Sofia was in town, but Marcus was here, and if he found out where— "I need to call Dolly," Lena breathed, already reaching for her phone. But Eva grabbed her wrist. "He'll see you on the phone. He'll know you're warning someone." Through the window, Worthy stood frozen between his sedan and Marcus's truck, his hand moving toward his weapon as he assessed the volatile man shouting threats. "Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down." "Who the hell are you?" Marcus rounded on him. "This is between me and my family. FBI, and I suggest you get back in your vehicle." The situation was deteriorating with terrifying speed. Marcus's rage, already volcanic, found a new target in Worthy's authority. Chun looked like he wanted to sink through the floor, and Ray was moving toward the door with purpose. "What are you doing?" Lena demanded. "Containment." Ray's voice was flat, professional. "Your ex-boyfriend is about to assault a federal agent, which means backup, which means police, which means exposure none of us can afford. We need to de-escalate now." He was right, and Lena hated that he was right. She watched Ray step outside, his body language deliberately non-threatening, hands visible. "Hey, friend," Ray called to Marcus with false casualness. "Let's all take a breath here." Marcus spun toward him. "Who are you?" "Just a guest, but I can see you're upset. Why don't we talk this through?" "I'm not talking to anyone except Lena and my daughter." Marcus's hands were shaking, a sign Lena recognized immediately. He was seconds away from violence. Chun finally moved, stepping outside with his deputy authority. "Sir, I'm Deputy Chun. You need to leave this property immediately." The convergence of 3 men, FBI agent, cartel operative, corrupt deputy. Attempting to control one abusive ex-boyfriend would have been absurd if it wasn't so dangerous. And Marcus, sensing the wrongness of the situation, grew more agitated. What is this? His eyes darted between them. What's going on here? Lena. He started toward the office door. Ray intercepted him smoothly, a hand on Marcus's chest. Not a good idea. Marcus swung without warning. His fist connected with Ray's jaw, snapping his head back. But Ray didn't go down. Instead, he moved with trained efficiency, deflecting the second punch and using Marcus's momentum to lock his arm behind his back. Assault on a federal witness, Worthy announced, moving forward with handcuffs. That's enough. The sound of screeching tires cut through everything. Another vehicle, a van this time, unmarked, moving with purpose. It stopped at the motel's entrance, blocking the exit. 4 men emerged, and Lena recognized the body language immediately. Not law enforcement, not casual visitors. Cartel. Ray saw them and swore. Let him go, he said quietly to Worthy, releasing Marcus. We have bigger problems. The lead man approached with the casual confidence of someone used to controlling situations through implied violence. His eyes found Ray immediately. Raymond Castellanos. You've been difficult to locate. I've been working on the recovery, Ray said carefully. Making progress. We've waited 15 years. Our patience is exhausted. The man's gaze swept the group, landing on Eva, Victor Salazar's child. How convenient. And an FBI agent. And local law enforcement. His smile was cold. Everyone's here for the reunion. Inside the office, Lena made her decision. She grabbed the radio and pressed record on her phone, capturing the number sequences. Then she moved toward the back door, the one that led to their living quarters, to the path that wound toward town, toward Sofia. Dolly appeared in the doorway like a ghost, Sofia's hand clutched in hers, the girl's face white with terror. Saw the trucks, Dolly whispered. Came back immediately. Sofia's eyes found the window, found Marcus in the parking lot, and her entire body went rigid. The trauma response Lena knew too well: freeze, assess, prepare to run. Baby, listen to me? Lena crouched in front of her daughter. We're going to play a game. Remember hide and seek? I need you to hide in the place we talked about. The safe place. They'd discussed this when they first arrived, the storage closet with the reinforced door, the space Sofia could lock from inside. A precaution Lena had hoped they'd never need. I'm scared, Mama. I know, but you're brave, and I'm going to fix this. Lena pulled her daughter close, breathing in her strawberry shampoo scent. I promise I'm going to fix this. Outside, the standoff continued. Marcus, momentarily forgotten in the arrival of the cartel operatives. Worthy, calculating how to call for backup without triggering violence. Chun, visibly shaking as his corruption threatened to explode into the open. Eva, clutching her father's broadcast coordinates. Ray, trapped between his past and an uncertain future. And Lena, watching through the window as her two worlds, the violence she'd fled and the conspiracy she'd inherited, collided with devastating force. The lead cartel operative spoke again, his voice carrying clearly. We're going to search this property, room by room, and someone is going to tell us where Victor Salazar hid our money, or we start making examples. His hand moved to his jacket, where a weapon's outline was unmistakable. Lena made a choice. She stepped out of the office, leaving Sofia hidden with Dolly, and walked into the parking lot with her head high and her voice steady. I know where the bonds are, she announced, and I'll show you. But first, everyone needs to understand something. She looked at each of them. Criminal, law enforcement, victim, predator. No one touches my daughter. That's the deal. You want the money? Fine. But Sofia stays safe. That's non-negotiable. The motel office had never been designed to hold this many people, this much tension. Lena stood behind Victor's desk, her desk now, with the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on her shoulders. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes that drifted like evidence of everything disturbed, everything brought into the light. Ray sat to her right, his jaw already swelling from Marcus's punch. Eva stood near the filing cabinets, her father's journal open in her hands. Deputy Chun occupied the corner, visibly sweating despite the air conditioning. Agent Worthy had positioned himself near the door, his federal authority meaning less with each passing minute. And the cartel operative, he'd introduced himself simply as Serrano, leaned against the wall with 3 of his men stationed outside, blocking any escape. Marcus Hayes was in room 7, temporarily restrained with zip ties after he'd lunged at Lena the moment she'd stepped outside. Ray had subdued him with efficient violence that spoke of training Lena hadn't wanted to acknowledge. The sounds of Marcus's rage echoed through the thin walls. Shouting, threats, the thud of his body against the door. "Everyone here wants something," Lena began, her voice steadier than she felt. "And none of us gets everything. That's how negotiation works." Serrano's eyebrow lifted. "You're negotiating? With what leverage?" "With the fact that I'm the only one who knows exactly where Victor hid the bonds. With the fact that Eva has the decoding key. With the fact that Ray understands the cartel's financial structures. With the fact that Agent Worthy can offer immunity deals." Lena met his gaze directly. "We all need each other, whether you want to admit it or not." "Bold," Serrano said softly, "for someone whose daughter is hidden somewhere on this property." The threat landed like a physical blow, but Lena didn't flinch. 6 years with Marcus had taught her that showing fear only fed predators. "Touch my daughter, and none of you get the money. That's not a negotiation point. That's a fact." Eva spoke up, her voice carrying unexpected authority. "She's right. My father spent his final weeks encoding the location across multiple rooms. Without the proper sequence, you'll never find them. And I'm the only one who's decoded his system." She looked at Serrano directly. "You want your 298 million? Then everyone in this room walks away alive and protected." "Protected how?" Chen's voice cracked with desperation. "The moment this comes out, I'm finished. My family gets immunity if you testify about the original operation." Worthy interjected. He'd been silent until now, watching, calculating. "I can make that deal. I've wanted to close this case for 15 years. If you give me enough to convict the original conspirators who are still alive, you get witness protection." "And I get what?" Ray asked quietly. "I help you recover the cartel's money. I'm a dead man. I don't help. I'm a dead man. Where's my incentive?" Lena had been thinking about this since the standoff began. "You get enough to pay your debt and disappear. We split the bonds, a portion to satisfy the cartel, a portion to Eva as restitution for her father's death, enough to Chan to make witness protection worth it, and the rest distributed among us to start over somewhere safe." "You think it's that simple?" Serrano's voice held dark amusement. "You think we accept partial payment and walk away?" "I think you accept partial payment or get nothing," Eva said. "Because my father was smarter than all of you. He didn't just hide the money. He created a system that requires cooperation to unlock. Kill any of us, and the sequence breaks. The bonds stay hidden forever." The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. Lena watched calculations happen behind multiple sets of eyes. Risk versus reward, survival versus greed, justice versus expedience. Worthy spoke first. "If we do this, it needs to be by the book. The bonds are evidence in a federal investigation." "The bonds are stolen cartel money," Serrano interrupted. "Federal jurisdiction is debatable." "Everything about this is debatable," Lena said. "Which is why we need an agreement. Right now. Before this situation deteriorates further." As if summoned by her words, the sound from room 7 changed. Marcus's shouting stopped. The sudden silence was more unnerving than the noise had been. Ray stood slowly. "That's not good." The door to room 7 burst open. Marcus emerged, his zip ties cut. He'd found something sharp, or broken the ties through sheer manic strength. His face was flushed, his eyes wild. And in his hand he held Deputy Chen's backup weapon, taken from the patrol car when no one was watching. "Enough!" Marcus's voice carried across the parking lot. "Lena, you're coming with me. You and Sofia. We're leaving. Now." Everyone moved at once. Ray toward the door, Worthy reaching for his weapon. Serrano's men stepping forward. But Marcus was faster, driven by obsession and rage. "I will shoot the first person who moves." His hand shook, making the weapon even more dangerous. "This is my family. Mine. You don't get to take them from me." Through the office window, Lena saw Sofia's face appear briefly in the storage closet window. Her daughter had heard Marcus's voice, recognized the threat. Terror made the girl's features small and pale. And something in Lena broke. Not fear this time, but fury. Years of suppressed anger, of swallowing violence, of making herself smaller to survive. All of it erupted in a single moment of clarity. "No," she said, stepping out of the office. "No more, Marcus." "Lena, don't." Ray started, but she was already moving, walking toward her abuser with her hands visible, her voice steady and cold. "You don't get to do this anymore. You don't get to terrorize us. You don't get to call us your property." "I love you," Marcus said, but the words were twisted, unrecognizable. "We're a family. You hospitalized me. You traumatized our daughter. That's not love." Lena stopped 10 feet away. "And I'm not afraid of you anymore." Marcus's face contorted. "Then you're stupid." The gunshot cracked across the desert air, but Marcus hadn't fired. Eva had, moving with the decisive action of someone who'd spent 15 years preparing for moments of crisis. Her shot hit Marcus's shoulder, spinning him around, the weapon falling from his hand. Serrano's men moved immediately, securing Marcus as he collapsed, screaming. Worthy rushed forward with handcuffs. Ray grabbed the fallen weapon, and Lena stood frozen, processing what had just happened. Eva had saved her life. A woman she'd met yesterday had put herself between Lena and violence. "Sofia." Lena's paralysis broke. She ran for the storage closet, finding her daughter curled in the corner, hands over her ears, body shaking. "Baby, I'm here. I'm here. It's over." But it wasn't over. In the chaos of Marcus's attack, Deputy Chun had fled. His patrol car was gone, tires marks on the gravel showing his panicked escape. And Worthy's backup was arriving, sirens wailing in the distance, multiple units responding to reports of gunfire. Serrano looked at his men, then at Lena. His calculation was visible: stay and face federal response, or leave empty-handed. "This isn't finished," he said quietly. "We'll be back, with or without your cooperation." He and his men were gone before the first patrol car arrived, disappearing into the desert with the efficiency of people who'd mastered the art of vanishing. The next hours blurred together. Paramedics for Marcus, who was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon and multiple domestic violence warrants. Questions from local law enforcement. Worthy's careful documentation of the scene. Eva providing a statement about self-defense that Lena knew was generous. Eva had shot to protect, but also with the precision of someone who'd wanted Marcus to hurt. Through it all, Lena held Sofia, feeling her daughter's trembling slowly subside. Ray stayed close, his presence unexpectedly protective. And Eva, after giving her statement, stood beside them both. 3 people bound by violence and Victor's legacy. When the police finally cleared the scene, releasing everyone except Marcus, Worthy approached Lena with tired eyes. "We need to talk," he said. "About room 13. About what you found. About what happens next." "Tomorrow," Lena said firmly. "Tonight. I need to take care of my daughter." Worthy nodded slowly. "Tomorrow. But Ms. Morales, this doesn't end with your ex-boyfriend's arrest. The cartel will return. Chen's disappeared, which means he'll either turn himself in or do something desperate. And that money is still hidden somewhere on this property." He paused. "You're in the center of something you can't control. You need to let me help you." After he left, Lena sat with Sofia in their small bedroom, holding her daughter while the girl cried, finally releasing the terror she'd been holding since Marcus appeared. "Is he gone?" Sofia whispered. "Really gone. He's in custody. He can't hurt us anymore." Lena stroked her daughter's hair. "I promise." But promises felt hollow now. The cartel would return. Chun was missing. The bearer bonds remained hidden. And Lena had just watched her carefully negotiated solution collapse into violence and chaos. Eva knocked softly on the doorframe. I'm staying. Tonight. I'll keep watch. Ray appeared behind her. So will I. And somehow, impossibly, Lena found herself trusting these two strangers more than she'd trusted anyone in years. Because they'd stood between her daughter and danger. Because they understood what it meant to be trapped by circumstances and desperate for escape. Thank you, Lena said quietly. As night fell over the Starlight Motel, 3 people who should have been enemies began planning their next move. Knowing that somewhere in the building's bones, Victor Salazar's final gift was waiting to be found. The chaos was Lena's opportunity, and she knew she'd only get one chance. FBI agents swarmed the property by dawn, turning the Starlight Motel into a crime scene. They'd cordoned off room 7 where Marcus had been restrained, photographed the parking lot where Eva's defensive shot had been fired, and begun methodical documentation of everything. Agent Worthy coordinated from the office, his focus split between managing the scene and attempting to understand the larger conspiracy he'd stumbled into. Nobody was watching Lena closely enough. She'd spent the sleepless night studying Victor's radio transmissions with Eva, decoding the coordinates into actual locations. 73921 for not random numbers but measurements and room assignments. The bonds were hidden in the motel's original 1960s construction. Behind false panels in room 2, inside the hollow bed frame in room 5, within sections of the vintage neon sign housing, tucked into the office walls. Victor had turned his entire property into a treasure map, and only someone who owned the motel could access every hiding place without raising suspicion. Sofia, baby, Lena whispered, crouching beside her daughter in their bedroom while agents worked outside. Remember how we used to play treasure hunt at the park? Sofia looked up from her sketchbook, her eyes still shadowed from yesterday's trauma but showing a flicker of curiosity. With clues. Exactly. I need your help finding something important. Something hidden in our motel. Lena pulled out the paper where she'd written Victor's coordinates. Your hands are smaller than mine. You can reach places I can't. Is this about the secret room? Lena's daughter was too perceptive for her own good. Yes, about fixing what happened there. Making sure we're safe forever. Sofia studied her mother's face with the careful assessment of a child who'd learned to read adult intentions. Will it be dangerous? Not if we're smart and quick. Lena glanced toward the door, where an agent passed by the window. We have maybe 15 minutes while they're focused on Agent Worthy's briefing. Can you be brave? Sofia nodded slowly, closing her sketchbook. What do we do? They moved like ghosts through the motel. Lena had the master keys, and the agents hadn't thought to confiscate them. She was the property owner, after all, cooperating with the investigation. While Worthy conducted interviews in the parking lot and his team processed room 7, Lena and Sofia slipped into room 2. The false panel was exactly where Victor's coordinates indicated, behind the bathroom mirror. Sofia's small fingers pried it loose while Lena kept watch at the door. Inside, wrapped in waterproof plastic, were bearer bonds worth millions. It's like pirate treasure, Sofia breathed. Exactly like that, Lena whispered. Now into your backpack, under your drawings. They moved systematically. Room 5's hollow bed frame yielded more bonds. The office wall panel, accessible from their living quarters, contained another cache. The neon sign housing required a ladder and nerves of steel, but Lena climbed while Sofia spotted, retrieving packages Victor had secured 15 years ago. With each discovery, Lena's heart pounded harder. This was theft. Or was it? The money had been stolen by the cartel, laundered through Victor's motel, hidden by a desperate father. Taking it now, what did that make her? She thought of Sofia's frightened face yesterday, of Marcus's violence, of the cartel's threats, of having nowhere left to run and $800 in savings. She kept moving. The final cache was the largest. Hidden inside the vintage cigarette machine in the office, its false back panel containing the bulk of Victor's converted assets. Lena worked quickly, transferring everything to Sofia's oversized backpack, layering the bonds beneath her daughter's artwork like contraband hidden in plain sight. Mama, someone's coming, Sofia whispered. Lena closed the cigarette machine just as Ray appeared in the doorway. His eyes went from Lena's face to Sofia's bulging backpack to the latter still leaning against the wall. Understanding flickered across his features. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Ray could expose her with a single word. Call Worthy over. End her desperate gambit before it began. Instead, he smiled slightly. Looking for structural damage? I noticed some loose panels myself. Let me help you put that ladder away. Lena's breath released. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Ray's voice dropped lower. What you're doing, it's audacious. Brilliant even. But they'll figure it out eventually. By then, we'll be gone. Gone where? Lena met his gaze directly. Somewhere the past can't follow. Ray nodded slowly, respect visible in his expression. Victor would have approved. He did all this for his kid, after all. You're doing the same for yours. He glanced toward the parking lot where Worthy was still occupied. You have maybe 10 more minutes before they start searching the rooms. Use them well. He walked away without another word, drawing an agent's attention away from the office with a question about his statement. Lena gripped Sofia's hand. One more stop, then we're done. They found Eva in room 4. Ray had given her his room after yesterday's chaos. She was packing, preparing to leave before Worthy's investigation trapped her further. When Lena and Sofia entered, Eva took one look at the backpack and understood immediately. You found them. It wasn't a question. All of them, $298 million in bearer bonds, currently hidden under my 9-year-old's drawings. Lena closed the door. Your father left them for you. You deserve to know. Eva's eyes shimmered with sudden emotion. He really did it. He really moved everything before they killed him. He protected you, even after death. Lena pulled out her phone, showing Eva photographs she'd taken of each hiding place. I'm documenting everything. Insurance in case this goes wrong. But I'm not giving the bonds to the FBI or the cartel. What are you going to do with them? Disappear. Start over. Give Sofia a life where violence doesn't follow us. Lena paused. But I want you to come with us. Take your share. Your father died to protect you. Let his final gift actually do that. Eva looked at Sofia, then at Lena, then at the backpack containing her father's legacy. If we take this money, we're criminals. If we leave it, we're victims. Lena's voice was steady. I've been a victim long enough. I'm choosing something different. Where would we even go? I have a contact. Ray gave me a number last night. A lawyer who specializes in new identities. We could be in Canada within 48 hours. Vancouver, maybe. Somewhere big enough to disappear into. Sofia tugged on her mother's sleeve. Would I go to a real school? With friends? The question broke something in Lena's chest. Yes, baby. A real school. A real home. A real life. Eva made her decision. I'm in. But we need to move fast. Once Worthy searches the rooms and finds nothing, he'll know someone got there first. A commotion outside made them freeze. Through the window, they watched Deputy Chen's patrol car screech into the parking lot. He'd returned, but not in surrender. His face was wild, desperate, and in his hand he held documents that he was waving at Worthy. He's trying to trade information for immunity, Eva murmured, exposing everyone to save himself. Chen's voice carried through the glass. Full documentation of the original operation. Ray Castellanos was the financial manager. Serrano's real name is... Ray appeared from nowhere, his face dark with betrayal. The confrontation escalated instantly. Two men who'd been part of the same conspiracy now turning on each other. Worthy shouted for backup. More agents converged. And in the chaos, nobody was watching the motel owner and her daughter. Now, Lena said. We go now. They walked calmly to Lena's Honda. Sofia's backpack slung over the girl's shoulders like she was simply heading to a library visit. Eva followed with her own bag, moving with deliberate casualness. Behind them, the argument intensified. Chen's desperation versus Ray's cold fury versus Worthy's procedural authority. Dolly appeared from her trailer, her timing too perfect to be coincidence. The old woman had been watching, waiting. She met Lena's eyes across the parking lot and nodded once. Permission, blessing, and goodbye all in a single gesture. They were pulling onto Highway 49 when the shouting reached its peak. In the rearview mirror, Lena watched agents restraining both Chan and Ray, watched Worthy ordering a complete search of the property, watched her motel, her impossible dream of safety, recede into the distance. "Mama!" Sofia's voice was small. "Are we running away again?" Lena reached back to squeeze her daughter's hand, feeling the weight of bearer bonds hidden beneath drawings of castles and open doors. "No, baby. We're running toward something. Toward a life we choose instead of one chosen for us." In the passenger seat, Eva stared at her hands. The same hands her father had worked so desperately to protect. "He'd be proud of us," she said quietly, taking control instead of being controlled. Lena didn't respond. She focused on driving on the road ahead, on the border that waited 8 hours north. Behind them, the Starlight Motel held nothing but empty hiding places and answered questions. The real treasure was in Sofia's backpack, in Eva's presence, in the possibility of starting over. Agent Worthy would search the rooms. He'd find Victor's clever hiding spots, emptied. He'd realize someone had outmaneuvered him. Again, the cartel would eventually discover the same thing. But by then, 3 women and a child would be ghosts, disappeared into new identities with new names and enough money to ensure their past stayed buried. Sometimes justice wasn't about courts and convictions. Sometimes it was about survival, about mothers protecting daughters, about taking what desperate fathers had left behind and using it to break cycles of violence. The highway stretched ahead, empty and full of possibility. Sofia fell asleep against her backpack, her breathing finally peaceful. Eva made phone calls in quiet voices, arranging their transformation. And Lena drove toward a future that was stolen, purchased, fought for, and finally, theirs to control. 72 hours after leaving the Starlight Motel, Lena stood in a Vancouver apartment with rain streaming down the windows and Sofia's laughter echoing from the bedroom. Real laughter, not the performance kind. The sound made Lena's chest ache with relief. Ray's lawyer had been efficient. New social security numbers, birth certificates, bank accounts under names that had no connection to their past. Lena Morales was gone. In her place stood Ellen Morrison, graphic designer, Canadian permanent resident, single mother starting fresh. Eva, now Evelyn Marsh, had used a portion of the bonds to hire a sophisticated attorney who'd negotiated her immunity deal remotely. She'd provided Worthy with detailed testimony about Victor's murder, enough to reopen investigations into cartel operatives. In exchange, her involvement in the bond recovery was classified as cooperating witness rather than theft. The rest of the bonds they'd divided carefully. Dolly received enough for comfortable retirement and relocated to Arizona near her grandson. Tess Nakamura, who'd arrived at the motel just as they were leaving, got funding for her book, with the agreement to fictionalize everything. She'd write the story that protected them all. Ray had disappeared after Chen's betrayal, released due to lack of evidence but marked by the cartel. Lena hoped he'd found his own escape, his own redemption. He'd earned it by staying silent when it mattered most. Deputy Marcus Chen faced federal charges for obstruction and corruption. His daughter's cancer treatment had saved her life but cost him everything else, the moral calculus of desperate choices. Marcus Hayes remained in California custody, facing assault charges that would keep him imprisoned for years. And Agent Worthy closed his case with partial victories. Convictions for several conspirators. Evidence of the original operation. But the money remained officially unrecovered. A mystery that would haunt him into retirement. On their 3rd night in Vancouver, an anonymous package arrived at Worthy's office. A USB drive containing complete documentation of the cartel's 15-year operation, Deputy Chen's corruption, and enough evidence to pursue justice properly. Lena's insurance policy and final gift. "Mama, come see." Sofia called from her new bedroom, its walls covered with drawings that showed open doors instead of locks, possibilities instead of prisons. Eva appeared in the doorway with coffee and groceries, settling into their found family with surprising ease. "I enrolled in classes today. Business management. Figured I should learn to run the PI agency I'm opening. Using stolen money? Lena asked, but she was smiling. Using my father's legacy. Eva's correction was gentle but firm. He chose this. For me. For Sofia. For every desperate parent who makes impossible choices. Outside, rain fell on a city where nobody knew their past. Where Sofia could attend school without fear. Where Lena could sleep without checking locks compulsively. Where Eva could honor her father by living the life he'd sacrificed everything to give her. The Starlight Motel would be sold eventually. Its secrets known but its treasure gone. Stories would circulate about the single mother who'd stumbled into a conspiracy and vanished. Some would call them criminals. Others might understand. Lena didn't care about either judgment. She cared about Sofia's laughter, Eva's healing, and the future they'd stolen from fate itself. In her final act before destroying her old phone, Lena had sent one text to Dolly. We made it. Thank you for everything. The response came immediately. Victor would be proud. Be happy, girls. You've earned it. And in a Vancouver apartment with rain on the windows and hope in the air, 3 women and a child began writing their own story. One where survival wasn't just about escaping danger, but about choosing what came after. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.